There's something quietly haunting about silence in the digital age. We exist in a time where nearly everything gets documented. Morning coffee, birthday celebrations, beach vacations, even heartbreak wrapped in aesthetic lighting. Yet there's a whole category of people who remain ghost-like online. They scroll through your content, they witness your updates, but their own presence? Almost non-existent. You might recognize someone fitting this description. Maybe that someone is you. And the question emerges naturally. What drives a person to choose digital invisibility when it seems like the entire internet is competing for eyeballs? The surface-level explanation suggests these individuals must be timid or lack confidence. But that narrative misses something crucial. There's a complex psychological landscape underneath, one that reveals fundamental truths about identity, self-worth, and what happens when you resist a society addicted to being watched. Because for certain people, staying quiet isn't about having nothing to say. It's about maintaining sovereignty. It's the deliberate act of keeping parts of yourself beyond public reach. Social media has quietly reconstructed how human beings understand their own existence. The platform logic celebrates visibility. It amplifies the loud, yet the people who withdraw often possess the clearest perspective. They observe without feeling compelled to add commentary. They process before forming opinions. They consider angles most people never see. Research shows something compelling. Individuals who post infrequently tend to demonstrate elevated levels of impulse control, self-reflection, and autonomous thinking. They're typically less susceptible to comparison spirals and the hunger for others' endorsement. Put differently, they're not performing identity, they're investigating it. The reality is stark. The majority of online activity isn't simply sharing information, it's constructing persona. It's an ongoing audition for acceptance. Each caption, each image, each update broadcasts the same underlying question. Here's my representation. Am I acceptable? Visualize this scenario. You're preparing to share something online. You capture 15 variations of the identical moment. You discard 14. You draft text, erase it, rewrite it multiple times. You select the edit that makes your features most appealing, your expression most engaging, your circumstances most enviable. You publish, then comes the waiting. You refresh after 3 minutes, then 7, then 15. Monitoring reactions, scanning responses, calculating your value through digital approval metrics. When someone steps away from this pattern, something fundamental transforms. They begin separating their worth from public opinion. They stop mentally composing captions for life events. They return to experiencing reality for themselves, not for documentation purposes. This explains the psychology driving many non-posters. They're seeking genuine expression in an environment that demands performance theatre. These individuals grasp that online environments aren't neutral territory. Every interaction constructs a fragment of public identity. Some people reject having their identity dictated by isolated moments or carefully selected images. They recognize how digital spaces amplify interpretation. A single smiling photograph gets read as perpetual happiness. An absence of updates gets interpreted as social isolation. Over extended periods, this weight becomes unbearable. So what's their response? They decline participation in the exhibition economy. They witness sunsets without framing the shot. They enjoy exceptional food without broadcasting the plate. They exist inside the present rather than performing it. In an ecosystem governed by algorithms and visibility rankings, refusing to post becomes almost countercultural. It declares, I'm maintaining agency over my digital existence. Psychology has terminology for this phenomenon, something called psychological ownership. It's the sensation that something belongs intrinsically to you. When you post it, that belonging diminishes incrementally. Imagine this moment. You're sitting beside someone you deeply care about. They share something that devastates them. You hold space for them. The moment is vulnerable, sacred, unguarded. And something inside recognizes this transcends sharing, because transforming it into content would convert it into public territory. The instant you translate it into words for an audience, it stops being exclusively yours, so you preserve it. And through preservation, you protect not just the moment, but your emotional autonomy. They don't reject connection, they reject performance. They don't fear visibility, they fear distortion. They don't hate social media, they just can't find themselves in it anymore. Perhaps that's not withdrawal or sadness. Perhaps it's a subtle form of liberation. Consider this honestly. When did you last do something meaningful without immediately feeling the compulsion to broadcast it? When did you last feel something without needing to explain it? That impulse, that need for display, isn't innate human behavior. It's learned. It's a result of years spent in feedback loops where likes, shares, and dopamine responses trained our neurology to conflate approval with significance. When someone exits that system, it resembles rebellion, but it's also restoration. They rediscover the straightforward pleasure of living for themselves, cooking without photography, traveling without geotags, feeling without explanation. Modern life increasingly resembles an unspoken competition for attention. Every image, every video, every posted statement attempts to be noticed, to be remembered, to receive that small validation hit. But some people choose the opposite direction. Rather than pursuing visibility, they prioritize protecting their privacy. These individuals understand that reduced exposure equals increased protection. They value intimacy, exclusivity, what doesn't need others' validation to hold meaning. Certain moments lose their essence when converted to content. Authentic laughter, quiet meals, aimless walks. Sometimes they're more beautiful precisely because they're not being captured. Picture a restaurant table. Food arrives. It looks incredible. But instead of eating, everyone reaches for devices. The table goes silent, except for camera clicks. Someone says, "Hold on, let me try another angle." 3 minutes pass before anyone tastes anything. The experience stops being about the meal and becomes about the documentation. You're no longer inhabiting the moment, you're staging it. But the person who keeps their phone away, they're actually tasting flavors, hearing conversations, feeling human connection. They're living the experience instead of recording it. The truth runs deep. Everything displayed online becomes subject to interpretation. The more you expose, the more you permit others to construct versions of your identity. This is why privacy-conscious people maintain boundaries. This choice represents freedom. When you stop prioritizing others' approval, you reclaim complete control over your image and your time. This pattern reveals a particular kind of internal fortitude. When someone avoids posting photos, common assumption suggests insecurity or self-image issues. Most of the time, reality is inverted. What actually exists is quiet self-assurance. A security that doesn't require display to exist. Consider this carefully. On social platforms, falling into comparison traps is remarkably easy. You post something, anticipate reactions, check responses. When engagement doesn't match expectations, doubt creeps in. It's 2:30 in the morning. You can't sleep. You open your phone and start scrolling. You see someone from your past. They're somewhere tropical. Perfect lighting, perfect aesthetic. Perfect caption, blessed beyond measure. You glance around your space. Unmade bed, unfolded laundry, working multiple jobs just to survive. Suddenly you feel insufficient. Not because you objectively are, because the comparison sits there, unavoidable, relentless. You know this feeling, don't you? That quiet comparison that happens without permission. The way it seeps into your thoughts when you least expect it. Perhaps we've all felt this at some point. The exhaustion of constantly explaining yourself to strangers. The weight of maintaining a version of yourself that isn't quite whole. This constant approval seeking gradually reconstructs how we perceive ourselves. Personal value starts deriving from external opinion rather than internal truth. People who avoid this cycle typically possess more stable internal worth. They don't need reactions to feel attractive or capable. These individuals carry quieter confidence. They trust their own assessment, their own choices, their own peace. The absence of posts isn't low self-esteem. It's emotional maturity. It demonstrates self-sufficiency, not needing external validation to understand their identity. But not everyone who avoids posting does so from centered peace. Some are motivated by apprehension, fear of critique, dismissal, or misunderstanding. Social platforms have intensified what psychologists identify as self-presentation anxiety. It's the persistent awareness of being evaluated, even when you're not. They worry their words might get twisted, or worse, completely ignored. So they withdraw. Not because connection isn't desired, because the price of visibility feels excessive. Paradoxically, sometimes the quietest profiles belong to people with the most active internal landscapes. They're not hiding, they're revealing. They're not withdrawn, they're engaged. They're not absent, they're overflowing. They simply choose stillness over spectacle. There's philosophical depth to that silence. In a civilization constantly demanding "notice me," choosing invisibility becomes self-definition. It announces, my existence transcends your perception. Not every experience deserves witnesses. Often the most transformative moments in life, personal growth, grief, metamorphosis, unfold quietly, privately, unposted. We inhabit an era where digital platforms seem perpetually active. Performance, comparison, constant noise. Amid this chaos, people who step back are frequently just protecting something increasingly rare: mental calm. The reality is that not posting can function as self-preservation. It establishes invisible boundaries between what's yours and what belongs to public scrutiny. People who maintain reserve understand this intuitively. They recognize that minds also require rest, quiet, spaces free from performance pressure. Reduced exposure means reduced comparison, reduced pressure, reduced anxiety. In exchange, something more valuable emerges: genuine presence. Focus on what's actually happening right now. These people inhabit moments completely. While others worry about capturing everything, they're simply feeling everything. Here's the contradiction. Social platforms were engineered to connect humanity, yet they frequently generate more isolation than ever. When you stop posting, you stop pursuing digital proximity and start rebuilding genuine closeness. You begin noticing who reaches out without needing updates. You discover who remembers you without reminders. That type of connection, raw, unbroadcasted, feels substantial, warmer, infinitely more authentic. Not sharing everything doesn't indicate antisocial behavior. Often it means precisely the opposite. Someone who values face-to-face contact, direct eye contact, honest conversations away from screens. Most often, these individuals are exceptionally social. They simply prefer experiencing socialization offline. They enjoy being with people, conversing, laughing, participating. They just don't feel compelled to convert everything into content. For them, the moment's value lies in living it, not displaying it. Imagine this. Your friend messages late at night. I'm struggling, can we talk? You call immediately. You talk for 45 minutes. It's honest, vulnerable, one of those exchanges that genuinely matters. They express gratitude. And you realize posting about it never crossed your mind. No vague statement about supporting people. No story about what real friendship means. Nothing. Because the moment was too meaningful to perform. Because some connections are too authentic to become content. People who post minimally tend to develop more substantial, more authentic relationships. They're not concerned with connection's appearance, but connection's substance. Online silence doesn't indicate isolation. It indicates choice. Choice to prioritize what's real, what's intimate, what happens beyond performance pressure. This behavior has deep origins. It emerges from authenticity, from sincere desire to exist as yourself without needing to prove anything to anyone. Fundamentally, what motivates these people is something simple yet powerful: authenticity. They don't feel pressured to match platform rhythms or fit trending patterns. They exist according to their own timeline, their own purpose. While many focus on constructing images, people who rarely post focus on being genuinely themselves, without filters, without scripts, without constant effort to appear perpetually happy. These people understand that living doesn't require audiences, that moments can be special simply because they occurred regardless of witnesses. They seek meaning, not applause. Picture a celebration. Someone produces their phone. Group picture, everyone shouts. You're in the back row. You smile appropriately. The image gets shared, tagged, distributed, but you don't reshare it. You don't add it to your story. You don't use it as evidence of social life or happiness because you were actually present. You actually experienced it. That's sufficient. But here's what's remarkable. The longer someone maintains distance from social platforms, the more their perception of reality shifts. Details become more vivid. Time seems to expand. Conversations carry more weight. It's as though stepping away from digital noise makes everything more substantial again. Because when you stop performing, you start genuinely experiencing. There's understated beauty in moving through life without needing evidence of every step. You're not considering angles or filters or captions. You're simply there, completely alive, inside the moment rather than outside documenting it. But the psychology runs deeper than simple preference. It's rooted in how human neurology processes validation. Every time we share something online and receive attention reactions, comments, acknowledgements, our brains release dopamine, identical chemistry involved in reward systems and addiction patterns. Over time, we develop cravings for that validation. We begin conceptualizing life in terms of shareable moments rather than lived moments. Now consider someone who resists that cycle, someone who deliberately disconnects from dopamine dependency. That's not indifference, that's discipline. It requires self-awareness to resist systems engineered for behavioral capture. Psychologists identify this as internal attribution, the sense that worth and contentment originate internally, not from external validation. Research tracking social media behavior patterns shows that people who take extended breaks from posting or consuming content frequently demonstrate measurable improvements in emotional regulation and life contentment. Because when identity stops being constantly reflected back through external mirrors, it solidifies, it becomes genuine. Perhaps that's a genuine rebellion, remaining integrated in a world that rewards fragmentation. For some, the decision to stop posting follows emotional exhaustion. Perhaps they once shared constantly until one day it stopped feeling real. They realized that every time they broadcast something beautiful, they felt invisible pressure to continuously exceed it. They weren't living anymore. They were performing, so they departed quietly. No announcement, just gradual feed disappearance. But here's what gets misunderstood. Not posting doesn't mean not feeling. It often means caring intensely about presence, about meaning, about protecting what's sacred. When psychologists discuss authentic self-expression, they emphasize something called congruence, the alignment between internal identity and external presentation. But in the filtered age, that alignment constantly distorts. You begin inhabiting a version of yourself curated for approval. So when someone chooses not to post, it might be their method of maintaining congruence, of preserving that delicate authenticity between inner and outer worlds. They live fully and quietly. And here's the paradox. People who live quietly often feel life most intensely. They're not distracted by its performance. They absorb details others overlook. How light transforms on surfaces. The pause before someone speaks. Distant laughter's sound. They are present. And presence is the scarcest resource in an attention economy world. The quietest profiles, the loudest minds, the least visible people, the most present souls. This is the contradiction nobody talks about. There's quiet confidence in not needing universal recognition, just understanding from select few. That's what non-posters understand best. That not every truth belongs to crowds. That some aspects of you deserve remaining untouched by algorithms and public opinion. Because once something becomes public, it stops being purely yours. Imagine hiking to a summit just as the sun sets. The sky transforms through orange, then rose, then deep violet. The air feels crisp against your skin. You hear only wind through trees and your own breathing. You feel completely centered, completely present, completely alive. For some people, that moment feels incomplete without documentation, without evidence, without sharing it. But for others, that moment is perfect as it exists. It doesn't need sharing to hold meaning. Actually, sharing might diminish it. The moment remains theirs, untouchable, pure. So next time you notice someone who never posts, don't assume they're hiding. Perhaps they're simply living. Perhaps they discovered peace in existence's quiet corners, the ones not illuminated by screen glow. Perhaps they're the ones who remembered what the rest of us forgot. That being unseen doesn't mean being alone. That being quiet doesn't mean being empty. That sometimes your truest expression is silence. In a world where everyone wants to be witnessed, where every moment seems to demand digital evidence, choosing not to display is courageous. It's swimming against the current. It's saying calmly, my life doesn't need broadcasting to be legitimate. This choice isn't escapism, it's awareness. It's understanding that privacy is also power. Because when you choose what to display, you reclaim control over your own narrative. Displaying less doesn't mean living less. It means living with more intention. It means being fully present in moments without worrying about angles, filters, captions. People who understand this exist with more ease. They don't measure self-worth by others' reactions. They know that happiness isn't in reactions, but in experiences that don't need witnesses to be real. And perhaps that's the lesson here. Freedom isn't in showing everything, but in choosing what to show. Because when we feel free to keep moments exclusively for ourselves, life takes on different texture. It becomes quieter, more authentic, more true. So if you're someone who prefers living over posting, understand this doesn't make you less interesting. Actually, it shows you've found something many people are still searching for, the peace of being yourself, even when no one is watching. And ultimately, perhaps this is the greatest sign of emotional maturity in the digital world, the ability to choose your own way of existing without needing to prove anything to anyone. Because ultimately, we're not meant to be performances. We're meant to be people, and the people who don't post, they remind us of that. Every quiet, unfiltered, beautifully invisible day.